We have today one of the most classic love poems of all time, if indeed it is a love poem. I contend that it is, but we also have two other sort of maybe vocabulary words or terms to look at in correlation with the poem. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for another poetry discussion. Pardon me, poetry discussion, which will appear in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one being the poetry discussion playlist, cruising ever nearer the 630 mark, but number two, the Love series here on the channel, 14 poems in 14 days, exploring the topic of love with some of literature's greatest minds, and that is what we have today. She Walks in Beauty by Lord Byron, and it reads as such. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and night meet in her aspect and her eyes, thus mellowed to that tender night light which heaven to gaudy day denies. One shade the more, one ray the less, had half impaired the nameless grace which waves in every raven tress, or softly lightens over her face, where thoughts serenely sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place. And on that cheek and o'er that brow, so soft, so calm, yet eloquent, the smiles that win, the tints that glow, but tell of days in goodness spent, a mind at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent. Now, I think there is an argument to be made that this is not a love poem in the traditional sense that it is about romantic love. I think that it is possible this poem is about a bevy of different characters and relationship types, but I'm going to classify it as a love poem for the sake of this series. Kind of a love poem. There are a couple of terms that make more sense, at least a little bit more sense here when we talk about them. But I want to talk also about the idea of love in this poem. In the last video in this series, I Carry Your Heart With Me, I Carry It In by E.E. Cummings, I think that we have a love which is related to the love in this poem. The love in E.E. Cummings' story/poem here, in my opinion, is of the obsessive type. And that might be true in She Walks in Beauty as well. Whereas in Love Song by Rainier Maria Rilke, we have a speaker who is yearning to keep their individuality opposed to being merging into one with the lover. We have in E.E. Cummings a lover saying, hey, I carry your heart in me. We're not just together. We are one, baby. You're inside me, and there's no getting away. We don't necessarily have in this poem any reason to believe that that love is reciprocated. Likewise, we don't have any reason to believe that love is reciprocated in She Walks in Beauty by Lord Byron. We have no reason to expect that to be the case, other than the fact that the poem was written. But is writing poetry all that normal a thing to do? Maybe not. So let's get into the terms with this poem, talking about what this poem is if it's not a love poem. We have this term blazon. Blazon is a form of poetry. The term originally comes from the heraldic term blazon, blason, in French heraldry, which means either the codified description of a coat of arms or the coat of arms itself. The Dutch term blazoen and is either Dutch or French. The term is often used to refer to the coat of arms of chamber rhetoric. The term forms the root of modern words emblazon, which means to celebrate or adorn with heraldic makings, or blazoner, one who emblazons. This form of poetry was used extensively by Elizabethan era poets. The terms blazon, blazoner, blazonnier were used in the 16th century French literature by poets who, following Clement Marot in 1536, practiced a genre of poems that praised a woman by singing out different parts of her body and finding appropriate metaphors to compare them with. All right, I'll get you canceled today. It is still being used with that meaning in literature and especially in poetry. One famous example of such a celebratory poem, ironically, rejecting each proposed stock metaphor, is William Shakespeare's Sonnet 130, which reads as such: My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I on her cheeks. And in some perfumes there is more delight than in the breath that forms my mistress's reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. I think that is the best fit for this poem. This poem reads a lot like this Sonnet 130, but maybe uh, without the negatives involved. But it could also be known as an encomium. We get this from literarydevices.net, the fanciest name in literature. Encomium is a splendid way to show appreciation through words. It honors the qualities of a person or thing like the stars in the sky. Encomiums celebrate heroes, scholars, and artists. Nature also receives its fair share of praise, though encomiums we can all through encomiums, we connect with the past and create a bond with people and cultures worldwide. This sounds like it was written by ChatGPT, but we'll excuse it. It's a timeless art shining light on life's beauty. Let's use this gift of praise to uplift those who enrich our lives. For praising, we celebrate the greatness within us all. So you'll have to pardon the corniness at the end there. But this poem is one that praises the beloved. What I want to know is, does this praise of the beloved fall in line with the other poems that we have seen here, though none of these poems that we've had so far line up with the rest? I contend maybe not. It is an interesting exercise with this poem to question just how well the speaker knows the beloved and just how well, if at all, she knows him. I'm not sure that there is an answer provided in the poem. Maybe there is one biographically, maybe there is one historically. I don't really care. I am in this way something of a new critic. Critics that go by new criticism, believing that everything we have to have in a text to understand it should be included in the text. If it's not, then the text can be understood without that artifact anyway. The poem here, She Walks in Beauty. Pretend they do know each other. Pretend that they are lovers. Pretend all of that. Pretend the closest amount of distance that you can imagine between these two. I still don't know that this poem shows love in a very interesting way. I think that the popularity of this poem comes most from the language involved, and that's understandable. I'm not saying that it has to be all of that sort of strange in order to get the attention, in order to get the praise, etc., especially with when it was published. Um, Anyway, guys, that's what I have for this poem. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on the channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. There's poetry every Monday, and I hope to have you back for the next one.